Jimmy's studio in the Village that morning. And Jimmy Galuzzi, you know, the drummer in the band, the late Jimmy Galuzzi, said, "Mark, you know, get out of the shower." He said, "You are not going to believe. You're not going to believe what I just heard, you know." So I'm turning up the shower, I'm drying up, and he goes, "What?" He goes, "Jimi Hendrix is dead." I said, "What?" I mean, I was just, you know, blown away, obviously, and so what are we going to do? We're supposed to go to the studio and meet Eddie Kramer. We're going to lay down some tracks as we're trying to, you know, get a new record deal together, and he was potentially going to produce it. I said, "I don't know what to do." I mean, it's just like everybody was in a state of shock, you know. So you know what? Let's just get in the car. Let's just go. So we drove into the Village, and everybody was just in total disbelief. And I remember walking into the studio, and I actually see Eddie there in tears. I put my arm around him and saying, "Jesus, Eddie, just like incredible. I can't believe it." So everybody was just stunned, walking around, and I remember Noel Redding happened to be outside, and it was just incredible. It's still hard to believe that happened.
In October 1970, Jimi Hendrix's funeral service was held at the Dunlap Baptist Church, Seattle.
I remember seeing him in the coffin. There was an open casket. He looked so waxen. He was always so vigorous and dashing like a buccaneer. He dressed like a buccaneer.
Jimmy's service was simple, to the point. Deep grief on the part of his fans that were there, couldn't believe what had happened. I mean, he went out so young with, I think all of his fans dreamed of being able to spend the rest of their life musically with Jimmy, and that he would continue to contribute in the years to come and continue to give them the thrills that he had brought them so far. So the grief was deep, the shock was substantial, and in a relatively simple way, simple and uncomplicated way, we said goodbye to Jimmy. It was all so sudden.
James Marshall Hendrix was buried at his family's plot in Greenwood Cemetery, Renton, Seattle. Tony Bongiovi produced the last of Jimmy's posthumous albums.
Well, in Jimi Hendrix's situation, there were lots and lots and lots of material that was recorded. Now, after they were able to assemble all of those recordings that were intact, where he had finished them, there was nothing left to release. So I was called in by Warner Brothers, because I had worked with him so closely at Record Plant, and I knew a lot of the material. And they said, "We would like to involve you in the production of some of these recordings." Now, I'm not very happy with what I did with Midnight Lightning. It was so difficult to do Crash Landing, but it was such a challenge, a technical challenge, an engineering challenge, and a musical challenge to make that record go together that by the time I came to Midnight Lightning, it was just, I was out. I was burned out. There was no more to give. And of course, that record didn't do as well. But when Warner Brothers says, "I want another record," you pretty much have to do that. So that's how those two posthumous records came out. And those were the two last records that were done. There was a whole series that were done, but those were the two last ones. And then, of course, they came out with compilations of greatest hits and things like that. But those were the two studio records that were made from the last piece of tape that had the last bit of recorded sound that could have been salvaged to make a record out of. And then I said, I can't do it anymore after that.
Jimmy took the stage by storm, finding huge success with such hits as Purple Haze and The Wind Cries Mary, and albums Are You Experienced, Axis Boulder's Love, and Electric Ladyland, which were accepted as trailblazing masterpieces. He should be remembered as a legend whose recording career transformed the heart of rock and roll.
Jimmy will be remembered by his music because you can copy it and play it, but you can't create it. And Jimi Hendrix is like the Beethoven of the 20th century, okay? Look at Beethoven. Every time I hear Beethoven, I know who it is, you know? And in the future, every time you hear a Jimi Hendrix song, you're gonna know who in the hell it was. It was Jimi Hendrix.
Jimi Hendrix should be remembered as the king, the greatest guitar player that ever lived. I mean, he was the epitome of the entertainer. I mean, musician, the guitarist. I mean, the best in the world. Like I told the mayor, he revolutionized the whole music industry. And he made such an impact on the whole world.
I think he's going to be remembered for someone who was very innovative and different, and who left a distinctive mark in American music and globally, too. And he was one of the first people that paved the way for the album trend kind of records. He was selling albums when people were selling singles. So everything about what he did was unique and innovative, from the studio to the way those records were sold.
I think that the reason that Jimmy will be remembered forever as a musician is it's a combination of great hits, nice warm singing style, and he was the premier electric guitar player of the 20th century. I don't think anybody's denying that, but what I really think his accomplishment and contribution was ultimately was as a pioneer of using electronic distortion.
Hendrix is the greatest rock guitar player that ever lived, and someone who represents all of those things that he has always represented, which is forward thinking and trailblazing ideas, and you know, just being a mother on the guitar.
My memories are constant right now. My memories of Jimmy are still in the present time, because I hear him on the radio, I see him in my dreams, I hear his music. You know, everybody knows Jimmy, knows me. I'm like, it's like he's not even dead.
He's not gone. His spirit's here. I mean, and his legacy lives on. I mean, you hear his stuff today, and that's 30 years ago, man, and it's still fresh. I mean, it's still fresh. What can you say? And I love it every time I hear a song on the TV or advertisement of Jimmy. Just makes me happy, you know. I hear Voodoo Child on the CDs, you know, on television, and I say, yeah, recognize, because he was the man.